hearing off the top there, probably what I would consider some of the most American music being made today, but that's some great music by Gangstagrass. And super honored to have joining us today Danjo, Dan Whitener, who is in the band. And I also got to thank you too. You're on Stork Patrol, and you're deciding to take some time away to talk with little old me.
Absolutely. We're really, really happy to do it.
But we don't want to bury the lead or jump to the key point of this. But one of the elements as to why we're having you kind of share your story today, specific to this theme, is you're currently taking a little bit of a break from the touring aspect of the band so that you can focus on your studying social work and looking to become somewhat of a mental health therapist for the music industry.
Yeah, that's the goal as clearly as I fleshed it out. I think sometimes when you don't know exactly what you want to do next, that can be a good sign that it's time to go back to school.
That's so true. But before we get to that, and that very obvious, probably difficult crossroads moment for you, let's just get back to the music here. Like, let's talk about, like, when did one of my favorite questions to ask, like, when did music grab a hold of your brain and not let go?
Oh man, that's I think with a lot of these things, the crossroads and the getting into music and changing my relationship with it, a lot of these things have been, ongoing journeys with many parts or phases. I mean, I can probably point to a few key moments, but just starting from the beginning, like I grew up with music in the family, in the
Hmm.
house. My dad plays bluegrass,
Oh, neat.
my mom plays piano, and this is generations. Like my dad learned stuff from his uncle, who learned some of that stuff from his dad. So we're talking about like at least four generations, and for probably further in my family.
So you
So
come by it honestly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and everybody comes to it from different places. I've met more people who came to bluegrass, for instance, through the music of the Grateful Dead.
Oh, interesting.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, and that's something that I've gotten used to. I think it's really a norm for a lot of people, but for me, yeah, I was listening to Stanley Brothers because I was listening to the Stanley Brothers, or
Right.
because I was listening to my dad's band play, Stanley Brothers songs. Um, so that's the my way in. And so I've always been taken by it. Um, I played in school, I played out of school. I went to school for music because it seemed like the logical way to continue playing music.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then when I went back to school for more music. And then when I got out, I figured, I just want to keep doing this. So is there any way I can make this into a career? And I don't think I used that word, but just, pay bills, make music. Um, just that way I won't have to stop playing
Yeah.
it to do anything else.
Yeah. So that bluegrass influence, that's obviously why you pick up the banjo then. Was that like when you were watching that seemed like the most magical one as a kid and you were like, I want to learn how to do that magic?
Yeah, I think so. It really drew me in, plus I was rebelling against my dad playing mandolin, and I said, I'll never be like you. Uh,
I won't be like you. I'm
yeah.
playing this instrument.
And wouldn't you know it, and then I started bringing the mandolin on stage eventually anyway,
That's
because
cool.
you can't get away from that. No, I,
No.
I I credit my dad for tremendous influence on my music, but I was also one of the aha moments was hearing what Bela Fleck was doing and
Sure.
players like him. I
Yep.
was fortunate to study with his teacher a little bit, Tony Trishka, who's right here in New Jersey where I live now,
Wow.
and his teacher Bill Keith. When I was up at school in the Hudson Valley, he was across the river in Woodstock. I got to go meet with him. So this tremendous lineage of developing the melodic, technical playing styles of the banjo and really elevating it into a modern instrument in the way that we think of it in this context today. That's really can be virtuosic, as well as all the other things, folk and rooted and just incredibly powerful in its depth and simplicity and its history. I mean, hundreds of years, but I know we've got limited time here. That's how I got into it. But banjo is one of those things where the more time you spend on it, the more you realize that you made the right choice, and there's so much depth there that you
Absolutely.
didn't necessarily realize.
It's one of the most cool looking instruments. It's cool sounding instruments.
Yeah,
It's like astonishing to watch somebody play as well as you do. And
thank
in
you.
fact, yeah, and you're right. We should bring you back to just simply we could talk all day about bluegrass and banjos.
Easily.
So let's make a plan to do that. But for today, like you just said, we kind of wanted to just kind of paint this picture of your history. Let's get to the Gangstagrass moment. So my favorite part about this story is either you or they found each other on Craigslist.
That's right.
I
That's right.
love
They
that.
they posted, and that's I had been looking on the Craigslist ads for I'd played with a couple of bands. I'd found different people who were looking for banjo players, and typically it would be a bluegrass band, maybe a country band, or like an Americana or rock influence with a banjo in there too for 2 or 3 songs.
Sure.
And so then I found this ad, and it just mysteriously said looking for a banjo player, and I said, "Oh boy, here we go again." And no, here we did not go again. I was
No.
I was wrong about that, but I went in with an open mind, and it
Yep.
turned out to be a terrific thing. And what I love when I get to introduce the band to people now, like when I played with the band recently, I saw some of the folks that have been touring with them. You know, when you approach this concept with an open mind, I think you can really get
Yes.
the potential, kind of like when I first approached the banjo as an instrument, and I thought, this seems cool, I'm going to ride it out. And
Right.
over time, over the last 10 years, the idea of combining bluegrass with hip hop has only become more fruitful and more obvious.
Yeah, and that's why I call it like some of the most American music being made, because you're taking something that is some of the most iconically American history music of bluegrass, and
Hmm.
then you're taking some of the most iconic current urban music and mixing it together in a melting pot. I mean,
Yeah.
quite literally. And so, it's another band too that I always love. Like, if I learn somebody has never heard Gangstagrass before, I'm always like, I'm almost jealous of you, because I remember the first time I heard it and it blew my mind. So let's bring in some of it so that people can also see you rip the banjo. And it's a song that you play and sound terrific on, called Nickel and Dime Blues. But here, enjoy some Gangstagrass.
Well, I went on down to the corner store just to get a little bottle of pills, 'cause the man on the television told me there's a cure for all my ills. Well, I walked on up to the counter and I told him what I had. Now he said, you ain't got no money, you can't afford to be feeling so bad. Oh, can you spare a nickel, brother? Can you spare a dime? Need a couple more dollars now just to get me on down the line.
Hey there, how you doing, ask the folks? I tell them all the same thing, old, black, and broken. They think that's a joke.
I'm going to have to apologize to our son and Dolio. We'll let it play in the background, but we're going to have to get back to Dan here. So there's our son, the voice of reason, Dolio the sleuth behind him, and then behind both of them is Wrench. He's the mastermind behind the whole thing. And when you got plugged into this, man, it just took off, because I was actually listening to Gangstagrass before you were part of it, and it took it to a whole new level. But it is such a wonderful sound and just joyous music. Like, if you
Yeah.
get a chance to see a Gangstagrass show live, go do it. Doesn't matter if you don't know a single track. It's a love fest, and it is so cool, and you're gonna love, like, just, you're gonna have it as your next favorite band if you had never heard of it before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, so I guess there's some cool elements to it. Like, we have two interviews with with all of you on it. We did one pretty recently off the release of the new album, but we have one back in the catalog as well. And such cool things like the Justified soundtrack. It's the opening music to that is that great show Justified. Also a terrific appearance on America's Got Talent, where you made it to the quarterfinals or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got on live TV in front of millions of people. We got to impress the judges, and yeah, the whole thing was a surprisingly positive experience for us.
Yeah.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, and then performances in caves in Appalachia and stuff like that. Like, just such a great catalog of awesome for all of y'all. But really, really great music and just killer playing right there.
It's just so much fun too, and there's stuff that I do with this band that I just would not ever do anywhere else. You know,
Right,
just-
exactly. So there you have it. And again, there's way more to dive into there with, like we talked about, your history with the banjo and banjo as an instrument and this music. But today we're focused on conversations around mental health. And so, like we mentioned off the top, you have stopped touring so that you could focus on this. Is there stuff you can share about that, again, crossroads moment where you decided this is going to be the most important decision and I need to go down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said before, you know, I think you hear these, hear the call of these different, pulls and pushes. People talk about things, influences that push you and influences that pull you, and ideally, you want to be following the pulls.
Sure.
Those things that really get you from inside and are motivating you towards something that's positive, as opposed to thinking about something that's negative that you want to avoid.
Hmm.
And for a while, really for a while, I had even before the pandemic, even before COVID, which was of course a watershed moment for all of us, every performing musician who had to kind of stop and figure it out.
Sure.
A lot of us are asking questions that we still haven't answered. But the reality was that for many of us, that was just a moment to stop and think about things that you were already dealing with, or not necessarily dealing with, addressing, but things that were on your mind, things that were weighing on you about the industry in general or your place in it. And that was true for me, as it was for so many people. So I was already feeling a little fatigued from the road in 2018, 2019. We were doing a lot at that point. I was thinking about starting a family around
Hmm.
then, and that ended up coinciding with the pandemic, which was sort of a silver lining for me
Hmm.
because it meant that I was home way more than I was expecting to be. We had a very
Sure.
busy, ask any musician about the touring year they had planned for 2020,
Of
and
course.
they'll tell you about all the grandest shows and plans.
Absolutely. It's so
Oh
true.
man, we were going to be in Morocco. Now I wasn't in Morocco. I was at home, and with my wife, and we were getting ready to have a kid. And so that was a factor. There were a bunch of factors. But then, as we got back into it, 2021, we ventured a toe out onto the road, tried out America's Got Talent. 2022 was a huge year. It was sort of the snapping back of the rubber band. And again, a lot of musicians will just be nodding along with this because we all went through it.
Sure.
Every deferred show from 2020, 2021, and some new ones that were booked that year,
Hmm.
had festivals were headlining triple bills,
Yeah. Right.
and it was monstrous, which was, that year was a little too much for some folks. And then
Sure.
2023, we started to realize that's actually not even going to be sustainable
Yeah.
either. So there's those, like, I don't know if I want to do that, but also I can't do that. So the expectations were all over the
Sure.
place.
Right.
Over
And
the
even
la-
the letdown of that was that swoon was now coming to more reality.
Absolutely. Like,
Yeah.
we can't sustain it as musicians. The fans can't go to 3 times as many shows
Right.
as they might normally. They don't have that kind of money or
Sure.
time or energy. No one would expect that. So over the last year, I was part of a couple of different events, conferences. One in particular, the really significant one, about a year before I ended up starting this journey where
Hmm.
I'm in a graduate program for social work. The band participated with this organization called Braver Angels, and we went to
Mm-hmm.
their convention in Gettysburg, which was focused on depolarizing people politically. And we were
Yeah.
the musical artist in residence. And that's about all I have to say about that.
That's exactly right.
Except that we also individually broke out into these songwriting workshops where we were the musical facilitators, and we worked with the participants who attended this conference, not necessarily musicians, but people who just wanted to get involved in that way.
Hmm.
And the goal was to come together across political divisions and borders, and come together and work to write a song about a specific topic that might have political contentious
Sure.
meanings associated with it. I ended up helping this group write a song about healthcare. All right. So, and it was one of the more meaningful experiences I've
Of
ever had
course.
in or out of music. And the fact that that was so rewarding to me really started to suggest, this band is allowing me to open such wonderful doors. And I
Sure.
don't take that for granted. But also, isn't there maybe then something further down that road?
Hmm.
We don't do too many depolarizing political conferences with this band. We certainly could. And I wouldn't be surprised to see
Oh, yeah, yeah.
more of that sort of thing. But it just had me asking, maybe there's something a little more in this direction, a little bit more direct and focused than
Right.
simply sitting on stage or standing on stage
Yep.
and performing in that way.
And you're absolutely right about that. Like at shows, I've seen, and I'm just going to play the stereotypes because it'll fit the story, but like
Oh, sure.
the very stereotypical bluegrass fan,
Mm-hmm.
pick whatever image of that you'd like, saying, "Oh, I didn't think I liked rap music, but I like this," and very stereotypical rap fans going, "I didn't think I liked bluegrass music, but I like this," and you're bringing these people together, standing together, clinking beers together, having a great time. So you're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. And we saw that over and over, and it was a wonderful thing. We really, I think music in general disarms people.
Sure.
I think when you've got those two different groups and people that might not get along outside of the concert hall, they're not going to get into an argument in the concert hall. They're there to listen to music and have a good time. And that's not an opiate. That's not something where we want to anesthetize or desensitize people. We're still talking about the meaningful stuff that we care about in the lyrics,
Yes.
but we're doing it in a way that's not standing up there and delivering a diatribe and getting everybody retrenched into their camps. And that, again, something we didn't go in with that political mission top of mind.
You were just making great music.
Yeah, but we started to look around at those crowds, and it emerged, and we realized, oh, this is a really great opportunity to do this kind of work intentionally.
Yeah. No, it is it's awesome in that truest sense of the word. Yeah. So let's talk about your motivation. Like, so this is obviously a big time decision for you, but it's so meaningful to you. So, and it's specific to musicians. Like you're looking to do this to get back to this industry.
Yeah.
Because you must know people, and you don't have to share anything other than just acknowledge the fact that you're motivated for this for obviously very important reasons.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And a way to put it, when I started to sort of craft my, I actually noticed over the last few years I had been subconsciously or consciously resharing anytime somebody announced that they were taking a hiatus from a band or touring, or if a band was breaking up or any of those things, I would share that and kind of register it and just mark the passing or the
honor
occasion.
it,
and also observe, like, well, how are people doing this? Because there's, I think, better or worse ways to handle that. Some of the expressions I've seen have been really, really insightful, and remarkable. And when I was writing my own sort of thing, I sort of said, hey, I'm taking a break from touring, and if you're wondering why I'm doing that, well, so when somebody says I'm taking a break from touring, your initial thought is probably going to be like, oh no, what's wrong? Are they okay? Like,
needs to go into rehab. Exactly.
The addiction got to a point, or they injured, or like a car crash, or somebody died, or somebody on stage died, or somebody in their family died, or it must have been one of those terrible tragedies that we hear about all the time. So, which is not for me, thankfully. But I really wanted to acknowledge, like, that is a common enough story. I don't need to name a person for you to be nodding along. You know what I'm talking about.
That's exactly right.
And we all do. Not just all musicians, but even fans. So I think we all get that this is a hard industry. And so for me, it was sort of pivoting. Well, I feel like I need a break from doing this. But why? Like, why do I need a break so badly? What is it about this that is so hard?
Right.
And I was looking to try to have a better understanding of that, not just from an experiential place. I've been doing this for 10 years. I know what it's like.
Yep.
But I was just showing these textbooks back here that you have on methods of research and policy analysis and all this dry stuff that I never thought I'd be getting into until you realize that it's tools and it's means to potentially, maybe do some work in ways that, when you get to that kind of a barrier, you've run out of road and say, this is about all I can do from where I'm standing. I need to attack this from a different angle.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And truly noble, and, really respect what you're doing there to make this decision, because it's not the easy one. I mean, it's asking for like a completely different set of stressors and, responsibilities.
Yeah. I think that's fair. And at the same time, I think back to there were certainly moments, you might spend like 5 hours in a van on average in a day to do maybe an hour and a half of the music work. I mean, sitting in a van is part of the work. Setting up your gear and doing sound check is part of the work.
Yep.
Having interviews, I often appreciated this part of the job as much as anything else because it was so engaging. But there's a lot of downtime. There's a lot of time that's just, you have to be there, and it's maybe not the most meaningful thing. And I think that can be hard on someone in a different way.
Sure.
Do I have a full workload right now? Yeah, I'm taking a full-time degree in 2 years on top of maintaining the family I have and, growing the family.
Right.
And, I've got it's a lot going on. It's a lot to handle actively, but
it's the calling that you're feeling. Like there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it.
No, it's a good thing, and with everything else going on in the world, it just feels like a great place for me to be in. I think there's a definition of stress that people aren't conventionally aware of as well. But like when we think about stress, there's stress and there's eustress. The Greek prefix eu meaning good, like euphemism, euphoria.
Sure.
Eustress is good stress. And for me, where I'm at right now, I think for a lot of people, music can be that.
Totally.
The music job, that can be a good challenge. It is a challenge, but it can be so rewarding. And I've had moments where it was that. But for me, right now, it's not the easy way. But I have this thing I talk to my wife about sometimes, where you think about the easy thing and the hard thing, and my sort of Occam's razor is, you always do the easy thing, because the hard thing, if it were you'd be doing it, but that's the harder thing. So,
Right.
You can look at a thing and say, man, that looks like it's so hard. But I'll tell you right now, some of the things, that had gotten me to a place of feeling like I just, it is hard to miss your family. It is hard it's hard to be away from home to the point where you don't feel like you can put down roots to a meaningful extent.
Right.
So many things I could describe that are hard, but one of the things in social work we talk about is a strengths-based approach. So, I can instead focus on when I started to finally see a path forward that I could understand over the course of the previous year. The Gettysburg Bravery Angels convention was one point in that. We went to another couple like incubator type events, and at one point I did an event with the Bluegrass Music Association, IBMA, and I was asking a lot of these questions, and I had conversations with people. I didn't know that Backline existed, and all of a sudden I got put in touch with the people running it through mutual connections, and it started to really point me in a direction to say, there's a way you can go here if you want to. And I don't know what's at the end of it, but some opportunities. Definitely.
Totally. Absolutely. So thank you for sharing all that. Thank you for doing this very noble work and putting in the work to make sure you'll do it well when you get there, because that's so important for these people who are at a moment of need. So I guess speaking on that now, before we kind of wrap this, but like, what recommendations do you give to people who are listening? So like what either resources to do or soul searching to do? Because I do think a lot of people may think, I'm not feeling great, but I'm not in need of clinical help. But maybe they are. Like, you know what I mean? Like, is there any advice or thoughts you would give to somebody who may be at that moment of just evaluating things? Because it's one thing I hope almost this event does is puts people in a spot where they feel like it's okay to maybe ask for help or to learn what services are out there and you know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
What can you maybe provide there as far as some guidance?
I mean, there's at least 5 different people I'm imagining, if I different kinds of people. It's such a different question. There's all of the thoughts in my head about all of this, which one of the things I thought about personally was I know people who are licensed counselors, and that sort of differentiates from social work in that if you really just want to do pretty much clinical therapy or counseling, you can just be a counselor and that's your lane, and great. And they're going to be fantastic at that. Social work really encompasses a lot more than that. And one of the things that troubled me was is it that musicians are struggling with their mental health, like from the medical model, just focusing on something's wrong, in here, in my
Right.
brain or my heart or my soul, but like me on an individual level?
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that's a real thing. A bunch of us do. I don't like to romanticize that because I don't want to say like, oh, you have to be struggling with
Right.
something to be a true artist. And unfortunately, I think that's a belief that some people have because of some of the glorified stories. But no, some of us do struggle with mental health on a personal level. But like I was saying, this is a hard industry
Mm-hmm.
in kind of a hard world.
Yes. Yeah.
The world is,
And with a deck that's somewhat stacked against you because you're on the road, you're away from
Oh,
your
yeah.
family or whatever support system you have.
Yeah.
If you have the addiction issue thrown into this, you're surrounded by almost every performance is going to be around alcohol and other options.
Yeah.
So like there's so much stacked against you if you're struggling.
Yeah.
And you can't seek therapy outside of the state you're like, there's all
Oh,
sorts of
yeah.
other than barriers to help that you, even if you were
Yes.
inclined to ask,
Right.
really make the music industry and the touring life particularly difficult.
Right. So, and one of the things you mentioned, interstate like telehealth counseling, there is a compact right now that's being developed in counseling, psychology, social work. All these fields are developing their own interstate compacts. So there's some hope on the horizon for,
That's good to hear.
the idea of, say, me being able to work with a touring musician who's in a different state every night, and I
Sure.
can actually do telehealth and it all be covered under insurance properly. That's assuming they have insurance, of course.
Sure. That's
Which
right.
is a whole other thing. But
Right.
generally, I feel like the quickest answer I guess I could give would be, if you're having these questions, um, there can be a way forward for you to find balance. And I want to say there's so many options on the table. You can walk away from performing music touring. You can take a break. You can also restructure. And I had plenty of conversations over the last like 5-6 years at various points, including the pandemic, but before and after, trying to find different ways to balance to make it work. People have all sorts of things in their lives, and talking to a therapist, a counselor, a life coach, but also finding all those other resources. I mean, who are you going to talk to about getting insurance? There are people out there who can work with you on that. And I'm not yet that person, but that's one of the values of a trained social worker is
Sure.
that you're kind of able to put it all on the table, as opposed to saying, oh, well, let's focus on you being sad because we can't change all this other stuff that's going on in the world. Well, maybe we can actually work on some of those things too. So
Totally.
that's
No, you're
just me
absolutely
being
right
an
about that.
idealist, I guess. But I don't know if that fully answers your question. I mean, it's so vitally important to know that you can seek help, that you should seek help. And like I said, there are a lot of weird, not just stigmas, but things are
Yeah.
also glorified about performers.
Yep.
Especially also when it comes to your idea of success,
Sure.
measuring yourself, your
Mhm.
workload. Like I say, you can seek help, you can take a break.
Yep.
There are a lot of things that you can do that you may feel like you can't, or you'd be wrong for doing.
Right.
And there's just a lot more conversation there to be had.
Yeah.
So don't shut it down,
Yeah. I think the thing that I've often said, and I'll probably end up saying it 3 times tonight on this show, is if you're working on your physical health and you go seek a physical, like, personal trainer, that's like, first of all, it's applauded, but secondly, you might be really good and you're just looking to get yourself a little bit better. So there's nothing also wrong with trying to be more mentally fit by seeking out help and guidance and a therapist or whatever, even if you're feeling okay. Like, you can only get better, and clearly we all have ups and downs, and those are not the times to go. Like, if you're in crisis, obviously you need to go get help, but
Yeah.
be better to avoid that if you could get to it on the front end of saying, boy, I can foresee a future here where this might not go so well. Work on that ahead of time, not in the moment, unless that's where you're at. But
yeah, there's never a bad time to work on these things. So
Correct, yes.
in some of my internship practicum work, I do a lot of life skills training in the pursuit of addiction prevention.
Mhm.
And I've worked with every age group. I've worked with kids. I've worked with adults in recovery, and it's the same material. We teach life skills. We teach social emotional learning. We teach, regulating your own emotions or those of your children, if you're parents.
Right.
It's the same life skills at every age, at every stage. It's just obviously presented in a different way that's
Sure.
age appropriate to who you're talking to. But you look at kids, my mom's from Cleveland, and we were paying attention to the public schools out there, and they started doing social emotional learning a while back, long enough that 12 years later, you could measure the outcomes of some of these kids, graduating high school seniors who had started this curriculum back in pre-K. So all of
Wow.
that to say, you're not necessarily in pre-K, whoever I'm
Right.
talking to here,
Right,
but
right.
you might be an adult now. That doesn't mean, it's never too late and it's never too early
Yeah.
to be, you learn it whenever you learn it,
Yes.
you get this help whenever you get it, and you might as well get it now, because it can only help.
Yeah. And you said the word stigma. There's this stigma that if you go ask for this help, you're acknowledging some sort of mental illness or this weakness or failure or whatever. None of those words should be associated with trying to be a better, more well-rounded person. So like,
Yeah.
to your point, it's like, just check it out and see if there's ways that you can get that help. And if not, consider that a good thing. But also, if you learn about services that are provided and you now run into somebody else who could use them, you're now equipped to help them.
Absolutely true. Yeah, mental
Yeah.
health first aid is a training people can receive. It's like carry Narcan. That's just another thing. Narcan is such a great sort of example. I mean, it's a hugely valuable thing,
Sure.
as a opioid overdose reverser. I mean, it can save lives. But the fact that we have these laws, these Good Samaritan laws, the fact that the drug itself is harmless to someone who is an effect, it has no effect on someone who is not experiencing an opioid overdose.
Yeah.
And the fact that there are also Good Samaritan laws that protect you if you're someone in a situation where someone near you is overdosing and you administer it, it's just a great thing in itself. And it's also a great analogy to say, when you help somebody, you're not going to hurt them, and
Right.
you can't get yourself in trouble.
Right.
So like you say, these are just basic skills for, a healthier individual and a healthier community. And there's no downside to learning this stuff.
Certainly not. Well, Dan Whitener, Danjo from Gangstagrass, studying to be social work, mental health counselor, or like you said, who knows where this will take you. I can't wait to find out. I know we wish you could join us this year, but like we said, you're on Stork Patrol. So the family is growing in addition to studying, whatever your free moments are is filled with this. So hopefully this is our second annual. So every February we're looking to do this. And so hopefully the third annual will feature Dan Whitener on the lineup.
I hope so. I'm really looking forward to it. Thanks so much for the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan.